All right, so we're going to be dividing decimals now. So first we have 354 and 8/10 divided by 5. First thing we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this so we can use long division. So 5 goes on the outside, 354 and 8/10 goes on the inside. The next thing you're going to do is if there's a decimal point over here and right here in the dividend, you're going to move it straight up into the quotient right there. We'll talk later about what happens if there's a decimal out here in the divisor. So just go ahead and move that decimal straight up so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to build a wall over here, make math great again. And what I'm going to have you do, if you're not strong for your multiplication facts, I want you to go ahead and create your own cheat sheet over here. So 5 is our divisor, so we're going to do every fact we know that goes with 5. So 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. And you only need to go up to 9. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 5 is 25. For those of you who know your multiplication facts, this step is really not necessary, but if you're struggling with your facts, setting this up will really help you with the division. 5 times 8 is 40. And finally, 5 times 9 is 45. We're going to use this as a reference as we start dividing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the first digit right here, which is 3. So we're going to ask ourselves, 5, since I don't like division, I like multiplication, I'm going to ask instead this question. 5 times what number is going to give me 3? And that number is going to be placed up here. So you got to think, well, look at my cheat sheet over here. The closest I can get to 3 without going over is 5. So I can't use 5 times 1 because that would be too much. 5, that would be bust, as I like to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 5 times 0. And 5 times 0 gives us 0. So we're going to put a 0 up here. Now, that was the first step, division. Next, you would normally have to multiply. 0 times 5 is 0, and then you put a 0 down there, and then you would subtract. That was multiply, then you can subtract, and you need a remainder of 3. But what I'm going to allow you to do, now that you guys are a little bit more advanced, you can skip this step right here. If we know the first digit is going to be 0, you can just move on from 3 and move straight into 35. So now, I'm going to look at my cheat sheet, and I'm going to think, 5 times what number is going to give me 35? So I'm looking down here, and I see 5 times 7. So this is my division step. I'm going to put a 7 over here. Make sure your numbers are lined up. Next step after division is multiplication. So 7 times 5 is 35. After multiplication is subtraction. 35 minus 35 is 0. After subtraction is bring down. And we're going to bring down this 4 right next to the 0. Make sure you draw the arrow so when I check your work, it's really obvious to see that you're following the steps of division. So now that we're done with the bring down, we're going to go all the way back up here and we're going to divide again. So once again, we're going to think 5 times what number is going to give me 4? Now, once again, the closest we can get is 5, but that's bust. That would be busting. So we got to do is another 0. So we're going to put a 0 up here. And this time, I'm actually going to go through the steps. So after we divide, we're going to multiply. 0 times 5 is 0. Then we're going to subtract. 4 take away 0 is 4. And then we're going to bring down this 8 all the way down. So now I have 48. So I'm going to look at my cheat sheet over here. I'm going to think 5 times what number is going to give me 48? So looking at my chart over here, the closest I can get is 5 times 9, which is 45. So I'm going to put a 9 up here. That's division. Then I'm going to multiply. 5 times 9 is 45. And I'm running out of space here, so I'm going to slide this down a little bit. And then I'm going to subtract. 48 take away 45 is 3. Then I'm going to bring down, wait, there's nothing left to bring down. But then hopefully you remember that if we have a decimal, we can freely add zeros right there into the dividend. So now I have a 0. I can go ahead and drop the 0 all the way down here next to the 3. So now I have a remainder of 30 instead of 3. So I look through my chart and I see, oh, this is perfect. 5 times 6 makes 30. So I'm going to put a 6 up here. And some of you at this point might stop the division process. I want you to keep on going until you get that 0 at the end. So don't just stop right here, please. So that was division. Now we're going to multiply. 6 times 5 is 30. Down here. Then I'm going to subtract. And I get a remainder of 0. And there's nothing left to bring down. So once you get the remainder of 0, you can give yourself a nice happy face. And yes, you will be graded on your happy faces. So let's try another example. Oh, and our final quotient right here is 70 and 96 hundredths. Don't include any of the zeros in the front right there. They don't matter. They're just a place. They're just holding a spot for you so that you don't put a number over there by accident. So on formative, you would actually type in 70.96, and that should get you the right answer. All right, let's try another problem. So this one is just a little bit more challenging. So you'll see right here, we have 28 and 784 thousandths divided by 1400. So you'll notice we have a decimal this time out there. So let's set this up. We have 14 hundredths on the outside. And then on the inside, right here, we have 28 and 784 thousandths. Now, unlike before, where you just move the decimal point straight up, we have a decimal point out here, and we do not want that. Remember what I said in class, guys. If you have a decimal point down here, it's like you have a pimple on your face. Over here, pimple inside, nobody cares. No one can see this, right? And there's like a pimple on your back. No one can see that. This right here is a pimple on your face. So to get rid of that pimple, we're going to move this decimal point 2 times to the right. So 1 and 2. So now, instead of 0.14, we have 14. We have a whole number out here, 14. That's what we want. So you got to remember this next step, though. If we move this decimal point 2 times to the right, we have to also move this one 2 times to the right, like that. If you forget this step, you're going to get the wrong answer. You'll get the right numbers, but your answer is going to be wrong. So please remember to move the decimal point the same number of times you move the one decimal point out here. So now I'm going to rewrite this problem to make it more clear. So on the outside, I have 14. On the inside, I have 2,878.4. Now I can move this decimal point up right here and have it ready for my problem. I'm going to write the steps of division as always, just so that I have a guide: divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. Now, this is where the cheat sheet comes in real handy. And I got to say, I'm really proud of some of you guys for definitely taking the time to do this. You might notice that it takes a lot of time, but it's worth it in the end. So we have 14. I'm going to skip 14 times 1 because we know that's 14 already. I'm going to jump to 14 times 2, which is 28. 14 times 3, which is 42. 14 times 4, which is 56. 14 times 5, which is 70. 14 times 6, which is 84. Oops. 14 times 7, which is 98. 14 times 8, which is 112. 14 times 9, which is, and by the way, if you can't do this math really fast, you can just do it the slow way. So 9 times 4 is 36, so you were group right there. And then 9 times 1 is 9, and 9 plus 3 is 12. So just make sure you multiply correctly. It would be really bad if you made a mistake on your cheat sheet, because if you make a mistake over here, you're going to make a mistake over here, and that's going to snowball into everything being wrong. All right, so looking at this, I have 14 over here. So right here, there's a 2. I know I can't divide that, so I'm just going to put a 0 up here. Okay, so 2 is smaller than 14, so it's not going to work. Now I'm going to slide over. Now I have 28. 28 is definitely something we can work with. So look at this. This is perfect. I can see from my cheat sheet 14 times 2 makes 28. So I'm going to put a 2 over here, right above the 8 in 28. That was division. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply. 2 times 14 is 28. Then I'm going to subtract. 28 minus 28 is 0. And then I'm going to bring down, okay, I'm going to bring down this 7. Now, I have a 7 right here. I'm going to have to go back to division. A common mistake a lot of kids make is they bring down two numbers at once, and they'll just keep dividing. They'll bring down 78 instead. So do not do that. After every time you bring down a number, you got to go back to division. Even if you put a 0 up there, you got to do it. So I'm going to think, well, 14 times 0 is going to get me close to 7 because 7 is way smaller than anything we have over here. So I'm going to put a 0 up there. I'm going to go back to division, multiplication. So 0 times 14 is 0. Going to subtract, get a remainder of 7. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring down this 8. So now I have 78 over here. All right, here's where it gets interesting. So what's the closest I can get to 78 without going over? So 6 right here gives me 84, too big. 5 right here gives me 70, which is close enough. So I'm going to put a 5 up here. And then that was division. Now I'm going to multiply. I know 14 times 5 is 70, thanks to my cheat sheet. Then I'm going to subtract. 78 minus 70 gives me a remainder of 8. Then I'm going to bring down this last 4. And I have 84. So I'm going to think 14 times what number is going to give me 84? And I see over here, this is very convenient. 14 times 6 gives me 84. So I'm going to put a 6 up here. That was division. Then multiplication, 6 times 14 is 84. Then subtraction gives me a remainder of 0. Nothing left to bring down. We have a remainder of 0. We are done. Happy face. So your final quotient is going to be 205 and 6/10. Remember to ignore that 0 in the front. That's just there to hold the spot.